A very good evening to everybody here who's joined us. I'm Dr. Neeraj Mankad, Assistant Dean Programs at Flame University. A very warm welcome to all our attendees on behalf of Flame University for our fourth webinar in the Connection series, Worldly Wisdom Through History, from Scriptures to Charlie Munger by Shri Vallabh Bhanshali, Chairman and Co-founder ENAM Group and founding governing body member, Flame University. So, uh, before we begin, a quick heads up for all our attendees. You are requested to put in questions in the Q&A box. You will get a chance to ask the questions once sir's talk is over. Let me begin with a short introduction of Vallabh sir. For me, as an academic, it was absolutely an arduous task to prepare an introduction to Sri Vallabh Bhanshali. Arduous because as I went deeper into his work, it revealed the multiple dimensions of his persona. While his achievements in contributing to business in general and uh, finance in particular is well known, what was perhaps more revealing were the other persona which emerged. A philanthropist in its true sense, he also contributes to nation building as the founder and chief mentor of Desh Apnaye Sahyog Foundation, which is focused on instilling a sense of active citizenship amongst school and college students. He is deeply involved in education. As president of the Federation of Jain Educational Institutions, the Satya Vignan Foundation, another of his creation, is focused on bringing to light India's unmatched heritage and knowledge in a modern metaphor. Shri Vallabh Bhanshali also inspired a course on Samyak or right knowledge as the foundation of spiritual progress, which is receiving great response from Jains across the country. Today, as we all grapple with the realities of the current crisis, Shri Bhanshali, the erstwhile chairman of the Global Vipassana Foundation, is perhaps the most qualified to help us tide through with his immense knowledge of the scriptures and of the world. Sir, I have been following your vast contributions and have known you for several years as the founder and governing body of our university. In my humble opinion, a fitting description of someone like you is best perhaps through the words of Shri Narsi Mehta, the Gujarati poet who penned Vaishnav to tene hai kahiye. So without further ado, sir, I would like to hand it over to you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Neeraj, sir. Thank you, Chetan. Thank you, Tejas. I'm so used to the other host. Good evening, all the participants from all across the country, from various backgrounds, students, I'm hoping to be students at Flame University, teachers, principals, and I have received some comments and questions from a variety of people. A warm welcome to all of you. At the outset, let me congratulate you for your tenacity and your patience. Based on my own experience, I know that most people have exhausted the quota of webinars they can handle in a lifetime. And if you're still here for one more, I quite admire your patience. As I take on this task, if Neeraj sir was talking about difficulty of understanding my work, can you imagine my difficulty to scan the scriptures and the oceanic knowledge of Mr. Charlie Munger and his partner, Mr. Warren Buffett. And it's only at the end of this effort that I would probably, in my own mind, judge that how would the great Mr. Munger judge my effort. It's very likely that he would say, well, my friend, you entered a kicking competition, though you are only one-legged. Or he would also say that, it was dumb of somebody to suggest a topic like this, but it was dumber of you to accept it. He says, you should know, work by the principle, you should know always that I'm dumb. All that I do, he says, and that's what he suggests, that I am less dumb than others. He says, I'm sure that others are dumb because otherwise we wouldn't be rich. We also make mistakes, but we make small ones. We just try not to make a large one, which would sink us. He would further say that our wisdom is very simple. Scriptural knowledge is well known. And who wants simple wisdom? Most people don't accept simple wisdom because it's too simple. People want complex theories, new evidence, etc., etc. And lastly, he would also judge me, saying all through his life, now he's 96, and I wonder if anybody can have more experience than him. And he would say that, my little friend, history shows that the percentage of people who are wise more or less remains constant. So here I am trying to change that percentage a little bit. Well, one-legged as I am relative to the topic that I have decided to share with you, I begin my kicking competition. To share some background, I passed through a difficult phase of my life. I was quite depressed. And it did something good that I got introduced to the most amazing Rishis and scriptures of our country. From Gita, Ramayana, Mahabharata were part of my childhood studies, from J. Krishnamurti, and then all the Hindu scriptures, Upanishads, and Jain Agams to a certain extent, but a lot of other material. Later on, I got introduced to Vipassana, and therefore I came to know about Buddha's teaching. So I got very familiar with Vivekananda, Gandhiji, Vinoba Bhave, and so on. But I was also very lucky that after several years of familiarity with those scriptures, I came to know about the work and life of the gentlemen Warren Buffett Saab and Charlie Munger Saab. It's difficult for me to call them by just their name, Warren or Charlie. They are such extraordinary people. They're modern rishis in true sense. So for me, when I was thinking of what I share with you, it was easy for me to think of, all the scriptural knowledge about Gita's teaching and Ramayan's teaching and so on. But I thought that it is easy to feel that those people have belonged to times gone by. In the scriptures themselves say Ramayana was in Treta Yuga, very different kind of moral standard. Mahabharata was in Dwapar Yuga, a very different moral standard. Now it's Kaliyuga, and it's a horrible time. So why not talk to you more about the Rishis of this age and the great Rishi of Rishis, Mr. Charlie Munger. It would also be very easy for you because it is the most simple language, amazing insight, and wit which is hard to match. Just excuse me. That, it becomes easy when I told you about, one-leg man in kicking competition, it's just one of the many extraordinary ones that he uses to describe the world. I also, as I was preparing, trying to think, what would you want? I know that most of you are very reasonable and your demands would be very reasonable. So, and I also know that most of you know the answers for whatever you're seeking. I've been on webinars for a few weeks, and so I know somewhat how to judge the mood of the audience. And reasonable guys, as all of you are, you would not want anything more, not too much. Say, I want to be rich, I want to be famous, I want to be happy, and I want to have a chill life. Nothing can be more reasonable. If those are your wants, so I would consult my guru, Mr. Munger, and he would say, well, this is very reasonable, and we have a golden formula for this. Surefire, it never fails. Just become deserving of what you desire, and you will get it. Friends, this is the summary of all wisdom through the ages, through history. That the worldly part is the desire part, and the wisdom part is the deserving part. And deserving comes from being prepared, preparation. So you find two sets of attitudes in this world, one of expectation and second of preparation. And if I were to take the same metaphor further, is preparation for what? For most people, it would be preparation for latching on to some grand opportunities. And that's not how it happens, actually speaking. The preparation is to make sure that no disaster will sink you. That training is a lot greater. After all, isn't it? That we say prevention is much better than cure. An ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. And who knows, there may be no cure. We are facing those times today where different countries reacted differently. Some did not go into prevention at all and they're suffering, and there is no cure. I mean, this is the kind of wisdom that we get from the world, history, scriptures, and most of all, I can tell you, my friends, that it is quite extraordinary. Over the last 25, 30 years, as I become more and more familiar with the work of Mr. Munger, I can't find any learning in scriptures which he would not have captured. So let me give you a little background as to who this Mr. Munger is. Born in 1924, went to work because he had modest childhood. He went to work for Mr. Buffett's grandfather's grocery store in Omaha. He did not know Warren that time. Later, he went to Michigan University to study mathematics. World War II broke out and he joined the army. 2 years within the army, once the war got over, he wanted to study law. He had not completed undergrad studies, but he was such an outstanding contributor to the war effort that he got recommended and he got admitted to Harvard Law College and did extremely well at the law college. At age 21, he decided to get married. That's not wise. But anyways, he went to Los Angeles, shifted from Boston to Los Angeles. He started a law firm, which turned out to be a great law firm. But after 8 years of marriage, Nancy Higgins, his first wife, decided to divorce him. Mr. Munger is hardly the divorcing type, but it was forced on him. He lost everything in the divorce. He kept the 3 children and was almost penniless. Difficulties didn't end there. His son died within a year of that divorce to cancer. While all this was happening, he was going blind in his one eye. Actually, eventually he went blind in that eye. And the second eye started to worsen. He later shared with a friend of his that my condition was so difficult and I didn't have much money, so I would walk several miles after meeting my son back to my home. And so his friend got very full of pity and he started telling, Charlie, what will you do? You are in such terrible times. You already lost one eye and you're going blind in the second eye. How will you cope as a lawyer? And you're so fond of reading. He stopped it. He says, I don't want your pity. You know what? I've already started to learn how to read in Braille. That's Mr. Munger for you. That's being prepared for life. And today, if I were to give you a context, that what does this preparation mean? Both of them, Mr. Buffett and Munger, sitting on the board of Berkshire Hathaway, they believe that being prepared means being prepared for anything and everything. There is no excuse that there is corona, which is unprecedented. He would say, what guarantee that something that has not happened for a long time will not happen? So we need to be prepared for that. To give you some number, at a time when the world is suffering because the world is deep into debt, Berkshire Hathaway is sitting on cash, hard cash of $137 billion. And that is out of a balance sheet of something like $450 billion. Now, people would say, oh, how can you be so dumb? You're always thinking of trouble. How would you get opportunities? How do you make money? Your assets are earning nothing. That's not how it happens. He says that those who are prepared, opportunities come to them from time to time. They always do. And when they come, a prepared mind is able to recognize it very quickly and also grab it with both hands. So they say, we could not make an excuse that coronavirus was unknown, and therefore it was okay to go down. We are prepared. And this has not happened for the first time. History is full of such events. In 2008, we had similar occasion, what is called the global financial crisis. And in that crisis, a lot of people got into trouble. I don't want to get into great detail. But one of the smartest firms in the world is Goldman Sachs. As other banks, investment banks and banks were failing, Goldman Sachs was also tottering. But they're very smart people. They didn't want the street to know this. They needed money badly. And who would they go to? Of course, they called up Omaha. They called up Mr. Buffett and Munger. He said, could we come and have a chat with you? So they said, most welcome. When they went there, they got a deal very quickly. And Goldman Sachs would always feel sorry that they had to deal with these two gentlemen. The best possible deal was given to these people, the conservative, safe-playing people, by the smartest people. All downside protected, all upsides and multiple upsides were given to the firm because they had cash and cash was not visible anywhere. So a mind that is prepared always gets opportunity. This is the law of nature. This is how they think. So question is, today's time when we are all affected by corona, we feel life is so uncertain, as if it has happened for the first time. To a lot of us, it seems so unlikely, so difficult, because we never learned to be prepared. And I'm telling you the story of a firm and of a group of people, or just a couple of people, who have taught us that all deserving is preparation. All life's wishes are met for people who are prepared, and opportunities always come. Those who are prepared in this current moment, you can take it for granted, that opportunities will come to you. There are so many stories to tell, and I could go on. So what I will probably do is try and capture their teaching in 3 buckets. So the first bucket is good behavior. Good behavior is a boring thing, isn't it? Just give me a second. When talking about good behavior, I surveyed a lot of an ocean of episodes and teachings and notes from their annual general meetings and whatnot. I never found anybody, any scripture, make such a neat distinction between nature and nurture and provide you adequate guideline for it. Mr. Munger says, first of all, recognize and accept what nature has given you. And in his colorful language, if you are a 5 feet 2 inches guy, don't play basketball. You will not do that well. But that's not the end of the world. If you accept your 5 feet 2 inches, you will find 1,000 things to do at which you can excel. I think this acceptance of the situation, whether it is Corona today or whatever it is in our life, that acceptance is so important in recognition of nature's design, that you are nothing but a cog in this whole big, large nature. Just standing at the shore will tell you that you know who you are. But more importantly, even if you're not even a little tiny cog in this whole global universal machine, there must be a reason you are here. And it's so important to feel good about it. The second is nurture. That if you have this acceptance, you have to nurture other qualities. And what are those qualities? That obviously, if you're part of a set in which you are born or placed, you have to discharge your duties. And you can't discharge your duties unless you're reliable. How many of us are excuse masters? Reliable people have no excuses. And if you have to be reliable, it's the same teaching of Ramayana, Pran Jai par Vachana na jai. The whole of Ramayana is based on just one principle, that you got to be true to your tradition, to your family, to your khandan, to your lineage, as a king, as a son, as a husband, as a brother, and so on and so forth. If you are not reliable, all your other virtues are zero. You're like a Mercedes 500 special edition, etc., which doesn't start when you need it. What is the use of that capability? And to be reliable, of course, you have to be prepared, and prepared massively, as we talked about. I'm sorry, I'm using multiple screens. We talked about holding on to cash. And how do you hold on to cash? Cash does not stay with people unless they have 2 habits, one of saving and one of simplicity. The simplicity is to be seen, to be inspired by in these people's lives. Mr. Buffett continues to live in the same house over the last 50 years. Their empire has grown some 200 times over the last 40 years, but they continue to have a head office of the same the same head office for last all those years with just 25 people. The car doesn't change easily. Nothing changes easily. And they explain this very well. He says those who do not demonstrate the capability to suffer today do not deserve the right for a better future. All their preparation, all the simplicity, all the cash holding is this capability. And that's the essence of investment game. A bird in hand is equal to the bird, or two in bush. That capability to understand the value of what you have and what it can become does not come from this clear mental trait, a character trait of saving today. Most of all, he would say, all this is not possible unless you stop being a child. And what does that mean? That means that if you cannot say no to your peers and friends and family and community or whatever, etc., when you are attempting what you think is good behavior, you can't say hell with you. There is no chance that you will have an independent mind. And when those crisis moments come, that independent mind and the ability to have that, grab that opportunity is founded in sanskar, in good behavior. Actually speaking, I could have talked endlessly about yam and niyam of Yoga Sutras, about sheel of Buddha's teaching, of vrat and mahavrat of Jains, and so on, the 10 commandments of Christians, etc. But it's not necessary. If you just understand it simply, that unless you learn to be close to yourself every single day by adopting the behavior that you think is good for you, when crunch comes, good or bad, you will not have it. The second part is, say, mental training. Now that's again a tough one. Behavior itself is not easy for a lot of people because they want to be, as he would say, you are not mental adults. This is even tougher because it requires that you think, you learn to think. And as Bertrand Russell said, that a lot of people would rather die than think. They actually do. So he said, unless you can think, you can't be prepared. And you have to read, of course. And he says, don't you think that this is something very smart, that you're reading all these books, etc. He says, nothing but ignorance removal. He says it is dishonorable to be more stupid than you need be. He lives in that fear, oh, that I have not removed any of my ignorance today at age 96. And unless you form that habit to read, you cannot be prepared. And to be prepared, you will find going through life, you will have complex situations. And when you have complex situations, you need more than apparent knowledge. You need knowledge to be able to deal with experts on the other side, right? When we're buying a house, we deal with an expert. When you go to a doctor, you deal with an expert. When you get married, you have different kind of experiences. When you go to a school, with your child's school, you meet with a different kind of expertise. And what you do, you rely on your common sense, or you call up your friend, or you go by a little bit of, commonplace history. That's not what he would recommend as a mentally trained person. He says, you have to learn to look at things from various ways. That's the only way that you will be able to deal with all these experts. And he guarantees you, as you would also recognize, that when you know enough about a lot of these subjects, all experts will be afraid of you because you connect many more dots. No wonder this webinar series is called ConneXions, Connecting the Dots. Let me give you an example. How few people learn to look at things from many points of view. In Jainism, Mahavir taught that unless you look at things from many points of view, it's called anekant, from many multi-endedness, you can't understand the truth. And he prescribed 9 broad principles. Mr. Munger has been studying more than 500 mental models. Whether it is a physician, it's a physicist, whether it is biology, zoology, botany, numerology, science of large numbers, small numbers, so on and so forth. And he says we have benefited immensely from it. Let me give you an example. When you are riding and you read that there's a notice board there, good for 10 people or 15 people, whatever it is. Normally 70 kgs to a people. Say if it is a lift carrying 10 people and it says 10 people, it means it can carry about say 700 kgs. What do you think is the true capacity of the lift? What do you expect it? 700 kgs? 800 kgs? 900 kgs? What sort of safety of margin would you like? You wouldn't be comfortable unless against 700, it's at least 1,000 kgs, or even better, 1,500 kgs. They understood this so well and built it into all their business, and they call it margin of safety. They don't do any business unless they see margin of safety. And so on. The second thing they learned from maths called compounding. Now, compounding is the most amazing phenomenon in this world. And people think of compounding only in mathematics. No, that's not true. Say, for example, when you deal with the same person again and again, you have avoided disruption. You don't have to brief. You know the surprises that, okay, how will this person go down? And the cost of finding a new person, experimenting with a new person, severing a relationship with an old person. If you think carefully, that those people who buy things for the long term, even if it is more expensive, they do a mental math of compounding. It's the most powerful concept. Studying all these mental models, there is a science called, critical mass, or that when there are extreme situations, the law stops operating. We call it, you would have seen it in water called anomalous expansion of water, that when water is cooled to 4 degrees centigrade, it suddenly, instead of shrinking further, starts expanding. These things happen in many aspects of life. They are not easy to understand or think of immediately, but let me give you an example. What are all bubbles? So there's a famous, very nice story that one of the great compilers of Mr. Munger's and Mr. Buffett's wisdom narrates. He said there was a race in which all horses except one decided to exit. So there was only one horse in the race. This man, the punter, came to know about it, and he punted a large amount of money on the horse, that this horse is bound to win, and I'm going to be a rich man. So the race began. There was only one horse in the race. Halfway through the race, horse decided to jump over the fence, and the race was abandoned. It was an unusual situation, not covered in the betting condition. He lost his shirt. You think this is a way out story? Let me just remind you that we have had situations like this. Some of you are familiar with tulip mania. That when tulips became popular in Europe, people were buying tulip farms and tulips, crazy sums of money, as if that was the most beautiful thing and it would last forever. People came to grief. When New Zealand was discovered, South Sea bubble, when Panama Canal was built and people thought, oh, the whole world will have changed. And right up to our current times of internet bubble or the global financial crisis, when they thought the Wall Street had created financial products which the whole world cannot do without, etc., etc. This training from that there are anomalous situations that come into being and they kick in so many cases. So when someone impresses you tremendously, someone disappoints you tremendously, when you start expecting just too much from a situation, all these the law of extreme situations comes into being. Next mental training would be distinguishing between activity and progress. A lot of activity is taken as progress, and only those people who learn to rub their nose in their mistakes again and again, who learn to be critical, self-critical, can make a difference Otherwise, we are all very happy. Oh, I've been working so hard doing this, that, etc. Progress stops long back. One very useful concept that I would like to recommend to you is inverting. He learned it from the great scholar Jacobi. So invert is what? Very, very handy. That when you're looking for a solution to a problem, it is an abstract situation. But if you said, what adds to the problem? By inverting what causes the problem? Because if you can see that, slowly the picture starts becoming complete. The jigsaw puzzle, which had no starting point, by inverting, you get a starting point. Oh, this causes a problem. This causes a problem. And then you can soon see, oh, if all these things don't work, then what could work, and vice versa. He said famously about India that India has been trying to fix itself for many, many years. Why don't they just see what is causing the problem? Just stop all of those. That will also, help you progress tremendously. I think it's not only India. It applies to a lot of us. The last bit would be emotional training. And that's the most amazing part. Firstly, he says, you can't have self-pity. A lot of us have grown up thinking of ourselves to, borrow from a Hindi song, Maa Ka Ladla. We've been brought up as Maa Ka Ladla, and we think we are something very special, and we treat ourselves accordingly. And therefore that self-pity sets in. Oh, Ma, today this happened and that happened. I remain hungry and I got hurt. And even if we are grown up somewhere, so easy to slip into self-pity. Self-pity makes you bitter, saps your energy. No one likes you. You become paranoid and you miss all the opportunities in the world. Corona, current times are perfect for those who are used to self-pity. Stop it. Grow up. You decided not to be a child. The second thing that he would recommend is no envy. Envy is the king of all misery agents. Except your own bitterness, it makes no difference to anyone in the world. You can be as envious as you like. Mr. Buffett has great insight. He said most people think that the world is driven by greed. He says, I think the world is driven more by envy. And let me give you an insight, and maybe you will understand where he's coming from. That most people, when they are comparing their riches or achievements, who do they compare themselves with? Do they compare themselves with Jeff Bezos of Amazon or Bill Gates? No. They're most likely to do it with reference to a sibling, with a friend, with someone known in the community, with a neighbor. Oh, these have been the subjects of your envy for long. And if you find, oh, I'm better than my sister, oh, I'm good enough. How right that envy drives the world a lot more than greed. And next is resentment. He says you can't have self-pity, envy, and resentment. And what is resentment? You're just angry about things for nothing. Oh, this landlord, this colleague, and that sense of revenge is the most stupid thing. Normally, as they say, a revengeful person is always digging two graves. How you must get out of this. If you have to be prepared for all those Goldman Sachs opportunities, you have to be out of it. And the last point is no self-serving bias. What is self-serving bias? You have decided that the world is like this, or there's a formula. So those who are aggressive, they find perfect reasons to be aggressive because they find the world to be that. Those who are fearful and defensive, they find perfect reasons to be fearful, and so on. And they say the big trouble is that unless you are careful, you will find all experts, so many authorities, so many scientists suffer from the same thing. Today, we have this corona situation. A certain set of scientists, so-called the traditional scientists, have a vice-like grip around it. In India, we have a situation we have a law which says that only doctors, which is MBBS, the allopathic tradition, can treat a COVID-19 positive patient. Because they think, oh, they are the only ones with that knowledge. A homeopath or an Ayurvedic doctor cannot have access to them. There is a certain code prescribed that this is the only code of medicine, and there is no unanimity in the world that, what is the therapy for this. So I'm not getting into this, but I'm only to illustrate that self-serving bias is such a big problem, that if you become conscious that you have no self-serving bias, you will be able to recognize the bias in others and deal with them very easily. And how do you deal with a person with self-serving bias? Don't try reason with them, try interest. It is the simple thing. If you give an incentive to a child, a lollipop is a lot more valuable to a child than all the reason and the gyan that you will give. Friends, Mr. Buffett sums up all this good behavior, mental training, emotional training brilliantly. He said there are three sets of people. There are innovators, there are imitators, and there are idiots. To be truly an innovator, you have to have the training that we talked about to be prepared, because you are not then just, you're not tomfooling, you're not just suggesting stupid ideas. You are very thorough, you're sensitive, you are a part of nature and you understand nature from multiple mental models and so on and so forth. But all of us want to look innovative and original, but we end up just being imitators. And the worst are the idiots who don't even know what they're doing. They are the ones who are maa ka ladlas, still stuck in their childhood. If I can just sum up that if you behaved in this manner, in his own words, he says, spend each day trying to be a little wiser, discharge your duties faithfully and well, systematically, you will get ahead, but not necessarily in spurts. Nevertheless, you build discipline by preparing for the fast spurts. Slug it out 1 inch at a time, day by day. At the end of the day, if you live long enough, most people get what they deserve. As Gianni Agnelli, the chairman of Fiat, famously said, that when you become old, you get the reputation you deserve. Friends, the world is a perfect machine. You will get what you put into it. We have got so used to living in expectations, living without preparation. And you are a huge market, right? It's so easy to make you nervous about something, to make you tempted about something, to make you envious about something. And this pampering that we have done to ourselves, never evaluating ourselves, that you can get into all these situations. If we want the performance of these two gentlemen, they have shared their life's code many, many, many times. I could have talked about Mahavir's teaching, that the mental models fits perfectly into Mahavir's teaching or Buddha's teaching. They say the reality is not what it appears to be. So they call it Samyak Darshan. Neeraj sir was trying to introduce, one of the programs we introduced, Samyak Darshan. Samyak Darshan is nothing but learning to see reality as it is. Vipassana is nothing but to see reality as it is. Their training and teaching is the same. Buddha's standard of life, he says, Atapi sampajano satima, vinaya loke abhijjado manasang, is the same thing as they are saying. You can't have self-serving bias, you can't have self-pity, you can't have envy. This is what Buddha says. Recognize the reality as it is without a sense of pain or attraction to the gain in it, because things are changing all the time. Those who recognize that things are changing all the time, they are the ultimate wise people in the world, and they are prepared for it. In my own little life, nowhere compared to these great people's life, this has turned out to be a good code. I will probably now take some questions. Thank you for your patience. And you must appreciate my courage for coming into this kicking competition, though I am one-legged. Thank Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I think that was quite a thought-provoking session for me personally as well. And looking at the kind of questions that have been emerging, just for the attendees, we had close to over 1,000 registrations, and a lot of attendees have posted questions. So at the beginning, let me apologize if we are not able to get to all the questions. But sir, we see one very interesting question that has come in from one of the participants. And to the participant, I will be unmuting your mic, so you could take that question live from them. I think, sir, one question that has been coming is from Tarushi Dubey. And one of the other attendees, Jaya Nair, also has a very similar questions. So I'm going to unmute Tarushi and ask her or him to allow her to talk. Tarushi.
Yeah, hello, sir. Good evening.
Yes, sir.
Go
We
ahead,
can
please.
hear you.
Yeah. So my question is, you talked about reliability, and you said, like in Ramayana, Sri Ram was known for his reliability, right? So, but in the Kaliyuga, we can't be reliable without being exploited. There are people who will always find ways to take advantage of our reliability. So my question is how to be reliable in the Kaliyuga without being exploited.
Madam, I just talked about self-serving bias. If I made a theory that if I am reliable, I'll be exploited, you will be exploited. But if you get out of that and you don't have this self-pity, you will say, how can I be prepared? So when you are prepared with a situation, you know more about most situations. And in internet age, it is so easy to be informed. And once in a while, you will have an adverse experience in life. And I shared Mr. Munger's, very relevant part of his life, that he did go through a messy divorce. He did lose his son. He did lose his eye. Once in a while, those things will happen, but you will not get into self-pity. So you have to develop a personal code of being prepared, being thorough, and being positive. That even if you were not reliable, you will still have many, many bad situations. So this is a self-serving bias that sets in many, many people's minds. So I don't blame you. But
all right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead, please.
No, sir. I was just
Next question.
Yeah.
Thank you. I also have a lot of questions that have come to me, in advance. So I will like to take some of them also. So you create an order and tell me, please.
Sure, sir. You can go ahead while I unmute the other panel. So Kshitij Joshi also has a question. I will let Kshitij take that now.
Okay. After Kshitij, I'll take one of the old
Sure,
questions.
Sir.
Yeah.
Sure.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
First of all, a very, very big fan of what you've done all through your life from ENAM to Vipassana. So just this one
Thank
question.
you.
How does one be grounded at all times? How can a person be humble throughout his life? Whatever he achieves, he should still be humble is what I believe in. But how to get there?
Firstly, just recognizing who you are. If you are a child of this nature, you are such a teeny weeny guy in this, just thinking of the enormity. That's one. And the second part is that doesn't mean that we don't have a lot of power within ourselves. So when we say how to be stable within yourselves, learning to be anchored within, which is what Vipassana teaches you, and a technique like Anapan gives you great anchoring within yourself by just learning to observe your breath 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the afternoon. It works like a surgery. I would highly recommend it. So I think a combination of service, being, in a planned manner, you help someone every day. You read and, get better every day. As he said, inch by inch. You will not spurt, but you will get ready for big spurts in life. And Anapan or some, exercise of that kind helps you become stable. And does that answer your question? You had something more to say?
No, sir, that was just my question. And I
Yeah.
thank you for taking my question. And I think I will just have a visit to Vipassana or try to get there.
Yeah, you can start with Anapan. It will be useful. So I will have a
Thank you so much.
question on my phone. What is the ultimate end use of
Okay.
money? On the way, we first earn and then store it and pass it away, keeping it in our banks or in hopes to pass it on. 2 habits he wish he would have stuck, that is referring to my life. So I'll answer the money question. It's a very interesting question. That if you, this 5 feet 2 inches person question or observation means what? That we all come into this world endowed with different capabilities and a different role. As we become comfortable with ourselves, I will know how to be, whether to be a singer, a dancer, an accountant, or a lawyer, etc. And so also about money making. Some people are very good at money making, some are not. And those who feel that they are very good at money making, they must continue to make money, because there's a role. There are some people who have to create a surplus of different kind. A scholar creates, educational and intellectual surplus. Somebody who is very good at physical work creates that surplus. He builds a building, or he builds a factory, or he builds a monument. Someone who is very good at making money, he creates that surplus. You have to be very efficient. And unless you are fair, you cannot be successful in it for a long time. So I think we have an urge given to us by nature. If you don't address it, you remain miserable. That's the kind of, Bertrand Russell saying that, most people die because they are not able to think about these things. So I think the purpose of money is to grow that money and use it wisely. You do not carry anything from this world. You have to leave it here, but leave it nicely. And let me give you this example of exactly this point in Mr. Buffett's life. He continues at the age of 90 to run Berkshire Hathaway and trying to make it grow, both the friends. And what have they done with their money? They said, we recognize Bill Gates is very good at using this money. They have given the bulk of that money, or, legated it to Mr. Bill Gates, that you are the one who knows better to spend it. So I'm not going to create my own foundation. I don't even care where you're going to. I've studied you and studied your attitude, and you can go ahead and do it. 2 habits that I would think I had developed earlier in life. I think I would have been more careful about my food habits in the early part of life. I have got those habits now, but somehow those bad habits still continue. And the other habit would be, had I learned to be bolder earlier. I'm still trying to be bolder. Most important lesson, his life, most important lesson in my life. I think it's unfair to take too many questions from the same person, so I'm going to skip the rest of it and maybe cover them indirectly. Yes, sir. Neeraj, sir. I'll take a question from the public.
Yes, sir. I think there is one good question coming up from Reena Banerjee. I think Reena ma'am. Yes, Reena ma'am. Can you please go ahead with your question? Can you hear us?
Go to the next.
Yeah.
You have her question? Has she typed out the question?
Yeah,
so
she has. So I will read the question. She asks that if the word philosophy means pursuit of wisdom, then this session has indeed given me a lot of insights on how to be wise and develop sensible principles of life. The question is, envy and jealousy are oldest human emotions that can anyone throw them aside? Is that possible in your view?
Just as ill health, giving into weaknesses of our senses, etc., also part of our personality. What most people don't recognize it, that nature has given us something, some extraordinary power that lies within us. When they decide, people like Buffett and Munger, when they talk about good behavior, so that you develop this capability, As you start believing in that capability, as one of the questioner asked about, the ability to anchor and be stable, once that capability starts growing, you feel, oh, you can do anything. And that's the story of all our scriptures and sages, Ram, Krishna, Buddha, Mahavir, etc., that they discovered this power within you by being respectful of nature in what it has given you, the positives it has given you, you overcome the difficulty. Start believing in your strengths. Slowly you find you can overcome any difficulty, including envy and jealousy.
Right, so thank you. So would you want to take some question from there, or should I?
In a hyper-connected world through the internet, we have so many available options, and at the same time, it can lead to many distractions, information overload. The nature of the universe is a flow and order. How one can move with the flow by avoiding narrow lanes that lead to a dead end and choose the right lane, whether it's career or investment or any aspect of life. To quote Marcus Cicero, one of the heroes of Mr. Munger, he said, if you read history or you invert, what does not work. So with the little patient work as to what does not work, you start recognizing what can work and you start focusing on it. Whatever be the distractions, you come up with a narrow model of, what is going to work. Second question is of, what is your aspiration? If you, as he says, if you try and work inch by inch, it's easier to feel stable and then figure out a complex world. If you try and take it all in at one point of time, it doesn't work. So I think simply because, so much food is available on the table, I don't have to eat it all. I can survey the table and say, well, this is what I eat today. If another dish is available day after tomorrow, I will see. Otherwise, I'm going to get an upset stomach. This is precisely today's world. That because people are not steady, from Facebook to Google to all the marketing companies are trying to make a grab at you by tempting you. If you just say, all right, what is good for me, which is the good behavior lesson, and I say, I'm going to progress inch by inch, you can achieve a lot. I don't want to take too much time, but at a point of time, I was poor in English. And I said, okay, I'm going to learn 10 words a day. And in 6 months' time, I had fantastic vocabulary and a very different kind of control over the language. But if I said, oh, how will I get it all in one go, I would have never progressed at all. So I think step by step is the answer.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. There is another interesting question by Mr. Rajesh Jain. I will just unmute him. Rajesh, sir?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, please.
My question is, you have learned all the aspects of philosophy like Vedanta, Buddhism, Jainism, and also you have spoken about this Patanjali Yoga Sutras. Is there you have to do it? Is there a hierarchy of doing all this, or it's parallel which you can learn this? Second question is, do you have a lecture series on it so that we can understand the correlation between all these few religions which you are following?
So question is, when we start looking within, that's the connecting point. Studying all those philosophies for the sake of it was not my objective. I was trying to study myself, and then I was trying to see what was useful. And I found a lot of things were useful. Exactly as Mr. Munger says, that, the center point is his own life, his desire to remove his ignorance, his desire to be able to see the reality in different angles. And that is it. So then, as you become familiar, you can choose a model that works for you based on your own experience. So you learn from others' experience as far as things that go wrong, and you learn from your own experience as far as things that go right are concerned. So I think that being a scholar, being a master of all the things, or is there a method to practice everything at a time? I don't think that is possible, advisable, or feasible. Idea is to get this feeling of being a stronger, more stable person, and then use whatever works for you. There is no series like that. I am speaking on Satya tomorrow. We have a series of 3 lectures on Satya. And the first one is Satya hi Dharma ka Marg. So in a way, I think it'll answer some of your questions. You can register on Satya Vigyan Foundation there.
Right, sir. Thank you for that. Sir, there is, I'm just collating a few questions that have been
Please,
coming up.
please.
I think what they're all trying to ask is that there is so much of information available in terms of books and through the internet. How do you go ahead to segregate what books to read, and what are your recommendations as to a method that we should follow?
I think reading some extraordinary books, like I would recommend Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow by Kahneman. Those who are interested in Mr. Munger's life, there are two books. One is, he quotes Buddha, and he says, Buddha taught what is the difficulty of life. He says sorrow. So I want to know the cause of sorrow. Similarly, Mr. Munger says, all I want to know is where I'm going to die. And so I will not go there. So from that point of view, there is that book by that same name. All I want to know is where I'm going to die. It's a great book to read. Wisdom from Darwin to Munger, another great book to read. Poor Charlie's Almanac, again on the teaching of Mr. Charlie Munger, great book to read. I would say, if you haven't read Vinoba Bhave's Gita Pravachan, great book to read. So maybe, what I can do is I can give you a list of books, and then you can send it to the participants. I may not be able to recall. I didn't expect this question, so I don't have a set of books ready to recommend. But Gita, Gandhiji's autobiography, Peter Lynch's book on One Up on the Wall Street, Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, Tipping Point, Incentives. These are some fascinating books to read. Incentive tells us that how people who work for an incentive, can be expected to mislead all the time. A salesman who is on an incentive, an expert, a surgeon who is on an incentive to do more surgeries, and so on. So a book on incentive is fantastic.
Right, sir. So we have actually short out of time. With your permission, can we take on one more question, sir?
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
I have a few questions on
yes,
my
sir.
phone.
Please go ahead.
How the future education system should be, right from a baby birth till college, etc. If he had to design it from scratch and also have faith that it would be acceptable if he makes it, I think is again referring to me. I think there are three parts to education. One relates to personal development. Second relates to our ability to live in a society in a good manner. And third, that relates to the political system in which we live. I think, being very healthy and learning to be resilient is the first part. The second part is social values, equality, fraternity, justice, etc. And unfortunately, our education system does not talk in this manner. And the third very important part, the kind of work that we're trying to do at Desh Apnaye, is to recognize that democracy is not once in a 5 years affair. It requires continuous engagement. The kind of power that we cede to the government of the day is huge, and it is not always used in the best interest. So how to become an active citizen and engage with the government to get the best, because the government can undo a lot of what you do privately in terms of interest rate, in terms of taxes, in terms of inflation, and so on and so forth, but people don't pay attention to that. I think if you have an education system which emphasizes experience and self-learning, and these three aspects, would be a very good system. That's the answer to the question that I had on the phone.
Right, sir. Thank you so much. I think we have gone way about time. I'm just going to take one more question, and again, I'm going to synthesize this because a couple of them have asked, it in different ways. So it's about, sir, how should we remain humble despite everything that we do?
So question is, begin with gratitude. I have my own formula, which is a synthesizing of Munger Sahib's teaching and all the scriptures. That there are 5 basic reasons that people are not able to achieve what they think they are capable of, right? 90% of the people don't achieve the potential of their life for 5 habits. I call them easy, lazy, copy, crazy, and proudy. Easy means we want it easy. Whether it is the question about humility or, whatever I want to achieve in life, somehow we got it in us that it should be easy. Second is lazy. I don't want to put in the hard work, even if I know the method. Third is copy, that we do most often what others are doing, as Buffett says, imitators. The fourth is terrible, crazy, which we do just like that. Whether Sita goes for the, Sone ka Hiran, the golden deer, or Yudhishthir playing, gambling at the dice. These are all crazy things that are completely unnecessary that we enter into. All the clothes that we buy, all the food that we eat, all the junk that we bring into our home. So many aspects of our life are just plain crazy. And the fifth is proud, that, with simple achievements, as compared to my neighbor or my cousin, etc., we start feeling proud. And then obviously the last point is that we do not recognize the great power within us. Then, once you decide that, I'm no more maa ka ladla or mere man ka ladla, something else happens. The first recognition is that I'm nobody compared to the powers that be. I did not give birth to myself. Just think about that fact, my friend, that your breath is not yours, your birth was not yours, your death is not in your control. What is there to be proud about? You start becoming humble. That, without the help of thousands of people and how many fortuitous events, you would have been nobody. Your parents decided to keep you. Some parents throw away their babies. Endless. The next great quality that will come into you is gratitude. Once you have gone through these 3 situations, that, what Buffett Sahib or what Munger Sahib just talked about, that, you recognize you're 5 feet 2 inches, but that's all right. Through good behavior, to develop great capability within. Those who develop this great capability within, they have a natural passion, which gives them life's purpose. And therefore, they are untiring in it. Buffett Sahib and Munger Sahib are working hard at 90 and 96. It doesn't tire them. All those, Prime Minister Modi doesn't get tired working whatever number of hours. It is their passion. And then you have passion to excel. You have passion to be reliable, and so on and so forth. And those who understand all of this will one day want to be spiritually advanced. So I think there's a set of 5 virtues on 5 difficulties and habits, and there's a set of 5. So I think just looking at who you are in nature and how many people help you become who you are will make you humble. There is no greater quality than gratitude. One single quality of being more grateful every day will give you every other quality that you want.
Thank you, sir. And for all the attendees, I think first of all, let me apologize, because sir, we had over 100 odd questions that we received, and it wasn't really possible to answer most of them because of the shortage of time. But thank you so much for your questions. Thank you so much, sir, for having spent this time and sharing your wisdom with us here. And may I also say that all of us who have seen your work at Flame, it's helped us light some path for those of us who walked here, and a lot of them do echo that sentiment when I say that. So thank you once again from the bottom of our heart for coming here and talking to us.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this kicking competition. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Have a good evening. And thank you all the participants for coming and joining in such large numbers. I think before we end, I would just like to let you know about our next webinar, which is happening on Wednesday the 27th on interdisciplinary studies, the stark choices in a COVID dominated world, why interdisciplinarity is indispensable now. We would have Professor Ananya Mukherjee Reid from the University of British Columbia she would be conversing with the Dean of School of Liberal Education at FLAME, Professor Santosh Kurtarkar. So kindly do register. You will receive an email with the details of these in a short while. Thank you so much, all attendees. Have a good evening and a happy weekend ahead. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.